Welcome everyone for a very special edition of the NovoNormal, the new normal. You usually watch this show in Portuguese, but today we have an international panel. So we're going to have our first international edition. And I'm very, very happy with the people that we put together today. The theme we're going to discuss today is how leaders are facing this remote team management. And our definition of remote teams or of what is remote at this moment is a little bit different. We are talking about millions of professionals who are now working from home and adapting their routines to an improvised home office environment. It was not very planned, which means that we all went back to our homes. We are working from there, and some of us have kids homeschooling. Our partners are in the same space, not necessarily. We have, a location in our house that is quiet enough to perform our work. So lots of things happening, and we need to adapt. Technology is helping, of course, but we are here trying to investigate and understand a little bit better how leaders are dealing with that, what are their secrets, their advice, and their concerns. So let me introduce our guests who will discuss this very exciting theme. And by the way, I have guests here. Today I have Paul that's sitting in Seattle, Patricia sitting in New Jersey, and Marla sitting in New York. So we have people from different parts of US here. And let me start by introducing Marla. Marla Newman has an extensive experience in developing strong and effective media solutions and respective go-to-market strategies that increase revenue and market share growth. She is a passionate leader and coach with demonstrated success of assembling teams who produce extraordinary results. She is now the EVP Digital Sales for Meredith Corporation. She's in this role since 2016. Before that, she used to be the Global Executive Director at Microsoft for Agents Partnerships. And that's where I had the pleasure, very big pleasure of meeting her. So I'm very glad that you're here today. Meredith National Media Group reaches nearly 200 million unduplicated American consumers every month, including 80% of US millennials. And Meredith is a leader in creating content across many media platforms. They create content in also many different consumer interest areas such as celebrity, food, lifestyle, home, parenting, beauty, fashion, and news. Marla, welcome. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Bruno.
So our next guest is Patricia Nogueira. Patricia, throughout her career, she built, managed, and mentored global teams. She enjoys cultivating talent to become strong leaders and effective marketing professionals. She led teams in Latin America, Asia, and now in the USA. I actually met Patricia when she was leading a Unilever unit in Asia. She's a marketeer who performed many different marketing leadership roles in companies such as Johnson & Johnson, Louis Vuitton, and Avon prior to join Unilever, where she is today. She's currently the Senior Global Brand Director for Dove. Thanks, Patricia, for being here with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And finally, our third panelist is a good friend of mine, Paul O'Byrne, a good friend and an old colleague from Microsoft. Paul is the founder and principal of Orca HR Solutions. He has over 25 years of experience working in senior human resource leadership roles in the dynamic software and hardware industry. Paul divides his time between executive coaching, leadership training, and aligning companies' vision and strategy for ultimate business success. His experience is really very diverse. From Ireland to India, China, the United Kingdom, and of course the US, Paul has had the opportunity in his career to be a part of a very diverse set of HR leadership roles, supporting many different divisions, operations, sales and marketing, international products, and worldwide research and development. Paul, thank you very much for being here as well.
Thank you, Bruno. Looking forward to it.
So that's great. And with this panel, folks, we are definitely up for a treat here. And before I shoot the first question, I actually want to mention something that I was reading today. So there was a research published by the Stony Brook University, and this was published at the Harvard Business Review in 2015. And that research showed that, unmanaged virtual teams have declines in innovation of 90%, trust of 80%, 80% decline in cooperation, and 50% decline in organizational commitment and satisfaction. We were forced now to a new situation, and I don't think those teams are unmanaged. So I would like to make a parallel with that, with the situation we are living today. So how did COVID-19 impact your work routine? What has changed in the way you engage with your teams?
So I think I would say three main points on how it had impacted my work routine and therefore the work routine of my team. I think the first one is we are definitely working more hours. I think all of us, mainly because we somehow the world became even more global than before. We having connects with Asia that starts at 6:30 a.m., right? To try to understand what's going on there and how to optimize all the supply. Because I work, as Bruno explained before, I work with Dove. So you guys can imagine what happened with the demand of hand soap and hand sanitizer with COVID. So it's a very, very tricky supply chain question for us. So this is definitely something. Last week, for example, we had a virtual European conference with all the countries, which for us here in America, it started at 5:30 a.m., right? So I think this whole thing on working more hours, it's happening across the board. There is also more, I can see there are longer one-on-ones with my team. So I usually do have one-on-one with my direct reports weekly. And I can see I usually dedicate 1 hour. Now it's usually an hour and a half or even 2 hours, because I think we all have to dedicate some time on checking on everybody, right? There is always this 5 minutes or 10 minutes trying to understand, how are you doing? Is everything okay? It's very often there is also a kid come or the husband come or the connection is not working or something happens, right? Which I must admit that I'm finding fascinating. I really think that the type of relationships that we have right now somehow became more personal in a very good way. I find it more authentic. I find it close. I find myself closer to some of my colleagues now than I was before. And that can be quite contradictory, but I really feel like that. And the other thing that I feel is there are somehow less bridges to cross to get things done for me and for them. I think the teams are closer. I am part of the global team. So usually I have the global team, and then I have the local team, and then I have and then I reach the sales team, which I was never even allowed to talk to the sales team before. Now we have calls, everybody together directly, because they are our guys in the front line. So I'm meeting people that work in the same building as me for 2 years that I had never seen before. And now I not only meet them, but I also see how their kitchen look like or how their son is looking like and stuff like that. So I would say those are my points on impact on work routine.
It's interesting to hear that you feel closer to your team, and that frequent check-ins are probably working for you. So I would love to hear Paul's perspective on that, because I know, Paul, that you touch the lives of many different corporations. You talk to many different people and leaders. So are you feeling that this is the same for those leaders?
Yeah, I mean, the first comment that Patricia made about the boundaries between work and home have shifted in terms of, many people have given me the feedback there are no boundaries, right?
Absolutely.
And then the other thing that I think what Patricia said, which is really interesting, is relationships and communications have totally shifted, especially with some of those organizations who had probably got, even good relationships, but the amount of communication that's happening. And I read a statistic the other day that the average leader is spending almost twice the amount of time in a week communicating with their people than they normally would have. So I think it went up from about 1 hour and 10 minutes to about 2.5 hours or something like that on average. And then I think the other thing that's also really shifted is people are thinking about people in a different way. They're thinking about people as whole people, meaning their work, their home, what they're bringing to work, their whole environment, both physical, psychological environment. So what, you know, I think I really resonate with Patricia is the relationships have shifted. And, you know, there is also very interesting research around at the moment that's saying that the organizations that are going to come out of this more successful are going to have to think about the power relationship between leaders and the individuals they manage, in that that has also shifted. And that humans are almost more at the center now, because we have to think about people both in their entirety and in the context of the total environment they work in. So the decisions that as leaders have to make are even more complex in relation to that. So there's a whole interesting dynamic that's happening as a result of the complexity and shift in, you know, in relation to both COVID-19 and the consequences of it.
That's great insights. And I love the data that you brought, that managers are spending more time with their teams. And I would even add to that, that from my experience, it's been more quality time with their teams, because it's almost like this experience is bringing us to a more immersed relationship, you know, whereas when we are, you know, offline, maybe we have so many distractions, including our screens. Here we are inside the screen, and therefore we end up giving our undivided attention to our team members.
Well, I think to Paul's point, right, like this notion and what you were saying is, it's definitely a different level of managing, because you've got the emotional and sometimes the very personal challenges. My kids are half the time coming into my Zooms, which makes me more, you know, personable and relatable, and vice versa. So all other working moms can be like, oh gosh, okay, it's not just me. And then there's also, you're in people's homes, and the conversation and where we're taking it, like we're getting to know each other, a team that's worked together for the better part of, for my world, we assembled a team over 2 years ago when we integrated 2 different companies, and getting to know each other in a way like you thought you knew your colleagues, and now we're learning things about each other that we had no idea. So I think that's a really positive outcome, is we're really getting to understand the full person and not just my intense work person. So I think that part's good, because it helps us as we try to manage people in different ways. You've got a better context to manage them under. So that's one thing. I think from an overarching, you know, to the point that Patricia made, I mean, certainly the hours are longer. The days and nights kind of bleed into each other. And it's also a really big challenge, because how do you help people find that moment to pause? I think that there is a bigger sense of burnout that's happening. In the beginning, I think we all came together over communicating, over videoing. So we are videoing all the time, and it has some great positives. And now I'm also trying to tell my team to like find the balance, maybe just pick up the phone so you can walk around and take care of a few things while you're very focused. But the notion of sitting in front of a camera all day, it's like we used to walk miles in our building getting from one office to the next, and you're losing that movement, and how important it is for people's mindset to get some difference in environment. So again, as executives, some people are going outside and taking calls in their outdoor furniture to be like, it's okay to do it. I'm still very present. I just need to switch my environments. So I feel like the hours are definitely bleeding. Video, face-to-face, for the most part, I think the positives outweigh the negatives, but you have to balance that without a doubt, getting to know people more personally, and then trying to bring some elements of fun to it. I think for us, at least, what I can say is in the beginning, it felt a little bit like the rug being pulled out from under us from a business perspective. And that, as you manage people, how do you keep them motivated? How do you keep people focused when it feels like everything's just kind of like stopping and halting? And I think that we, as a leadership team, quickly established some immediate goals. So we kind of re-level set the team of like, what do you do today? What do you do tomorrow? And then we'll talk again the next day, figure out what we do. So it was kind of this ongoing, like, just give people some really clear things to kind of wrap their hands around and focus on doing. And that, I think, has proven to be very effective, because people felt a sense of purpose, And I think more than anything, they wanted to have that sense of belonging because they felt so removed. So I think that's been paramount.
And actually, Marla, I think you gave me a couple of hooks for my next question, because, you know, you mentioned about getting, you know, now you are not just bringing work home, but we are actually bringing our boss home. The company is coming with the leaders and etc. So, and you know, and these long hours has been a kind of a theme for many professionals that I discuss, and many clients that I talk to, all of them reporting that they are spending longer hours. There are lots of reasons for that, but that's a fact. So with that in mind, Marla, I would like to continue with you asking how your team, how do you believe, or you're perceiving that your team is adjusting to this new normal?
So I think there's the pendulum is kind of wide, and I think it's aired on the too much, where people don't know how to stop. And it's kind of like, you know what, it's 7 o'clock, let's stop. Or instituting some happy hours with the team. It's like, you know, we have so one of the things we instituted immediately, to Patricia's point of needing to check in with the team, is I did a daily stand-up with my directs. My boss has a daily stand-up with her senior leadership team. I do one with my team, and then they do one with theirs. And so it was this, for the first, you know, 5 or 6 weeks, it was people like, they were dialing in early for it. Like everyone just wanted to be connected. I keep giving my team a chance to say, hey, should we do it every couple days? We don't need to do it every day. And they've opted, they want it. So as long as there's a benefit, we're driving some business results or some personal emotional results, we're going to continue to do it. But once in a while, we turned it into a happy hour. So it's like, let's not be so intense about work right now. You've put in a full day. It's 5 o'clock. Let's just talk. And so again, I think it's the trying to balance it out. I mean, even myself as an executive, I have a first grader, and there are days where I'm like, I have to teach him math, or no, like, how is this going to happen? And my husband's sitting next to me, and I'm trying to lead my team, and like this sucks. And then I kind of say it. Like, and I think it's making yourself like really human. I'm like, okay, I got all these people. I have taken meetings in a treehouse just to get away from everyone.
Oh my God, treehouse. That's good. That's a first, huh? That's very good.
That cracks everybody up. But I'm like, if I'm not in the treehouse, no one can hear me right now, because like everyone's screaming back in the house. And so whatever it is, but it's kind of talking about how hard it is. So when I've gone one-on-one with each of my individual groups within my org, that's the first thing I say is like, I don't know about you guys, but some days it's so hard, and some days it's so exciting. And like, I try to just share the real instead of just pretend business as usual, because it just isn't.
That's so
Well, Marla, can I ask you one thing for you to share with me? Because I thought it's very interesting what you said, that you have daily checkouts with your team. Like when COVID started, we had put it like a Monday, 8:30 for half an hour, and also a Friday, just to check how people are at the beginning of the week, and then how are they by the end of the week. And then that was working fine. It was the whole team. It was a Zoom meeting, just half an hour, everybody together to chat non-business related stuff, right? But then it's interesting because after 3 weeks, in one of my one-on-ones with one of my direct reports, and she had mentioned to me and say, Patty, I'm starting to feel uncomfortable with so many checkouts on us, because her point was very interesting. She said, look, because when we do the check-in on a Friday, I have a lot of things work related to say. But when we have it on a Monday morning, it's all about my weekend. And I think it's a bit of oversharing. So I think another point that I would like to bring, Bruno, I've learned through this COVID, I am very extroverted. I'm Brazilian. My life is an open book. I can share whatever with anyone. But I realize that not everybody is like that. So I actually think that we need to find a balance to avoid the oversharing, the over asking, and the over concern as well, because it's not everybody who has the same level of, you know, being comfortable on how much they share, isn't it?
I agree with you totally. It's really
hard. I don't know, Paul, if you had experienced something like that as well.
Yeah,
or Bruno,
and
if you had
this
heard.
kind of this also relates to kind of some of the work we do. Where we do a lot of work in helping teams and individuals understand sort of like their different behaviors and motivators. And what we've been doing with our clients is we've been kind of updating them around different there is no one sort of experience people are having. Different people are experiencing it differently. And so what we have done is we've sort of given them some tools to be able to help them understand around communicating with different people. You may need to think about, you know, the types of people you have, and that some people want to have all sort of very extrovert communications, and other people are not quite so happy with that. So we kind of have to adapt to the different styles of people that we have. And I think you said another thing that, Marla, you said, I think was very interesting, is there's a lot, despite everything, there's a lot of anxiety that people are having. And there's sort of very good reason for it. In terms of the whole sort of COVID-19 and the uncertainty has put people into what's called a threat state. And it's kind of where when people have lack of clarity, they don't have the autonomy that they've had, and their relationships are being impacted. These are three things well known in research that actually impact people's sort of neurochemistry, in terms of they have much more reactive tendencies to these things, and it puts them in a threat state. So people are going around in a threat state, and some days they'll feel good, and other days they'll think, oh my God, I don't know where I am, and stuff like that. So one of the things I think it's really important that we are also being aware that we do need to check in to people around where they're at as well. So sometimes, you know, one of the things that we've been encouraging, and we do among ourselves, is we don't have a conversation about check-in on business. We just have a check-in, just how are you doing today? You know, how are you growing? What's happening? And let people share as much as they want. And sometimes that can be really helpful, because it allows people to come, it legitimizes where they're coming from. And it allows them to come into that space in whatever way they want to do. Talked about the check-ins. I think it is still important, and especially knowing that, you know, mental health issues are way up. We're hearing in a lot of organizations, you know, companies that have sort of assistive programs, that there's been a lot more people reaching out to some of these things. So it is a very anxious time, and I think it's going to be for quite a while for people, just because of the uncertainty and lack of clarity.
And Paul, you know that you talking about that, it came immediately to my mind. One thing that I've been learning with you and with Renee, one of our colleagues, which is this habit of starting and ending the meeting with a very quick mindful exercise. You know, for me, it's been great, because I feel like, you know, you mark the end of that meeting, and then you mark the beginning of the other one, and you kind of give yourself that time, that even if you're back-to-back meetings, you need that time to breathe a little bit and to kind of consciously come back and concentrate on what you're doing, and even sometimes to decelerate, because sometimes you come very fast from another meeting and people are still warming up. So I think this element of mindfulness is a good element to deal with anxiety, with the stress levels. And by the way, just commenting on that, I just did the research on LinkedIn to ask exactly about the stress levels and how they are affecting people. And you know, actually, in fact, the question that I made was different. The question that I made was, what is keeping you up at night as a leader? And growing stress levels was 38%, with 38% was the most cited answer. Very close after that came communication, and then a little bit lower collaboration. So I'd love to hear from you, the panel, and I'm gonna open up for you. What are your thoughts on that? What's been keeping you up at night with this new situation?
For me, I think it's a mixture of things. So one is, it's how to keep the team focused, how to identify the transformation that we need to go through. There's a lot of people right now talking about, this is the time, you're going to transform your organization, you're going to transform what you do, how you go to market, the people that you need to do it. If you don't transform now, you're going to miss the boat. I just feel like there's this whole kind of talk track of that. Yet we're only 8 weeks in, and no one really knows where we're fully going. So there's certainly some things that have to transform. And so I think one of the bigger things is, how do I help to elevate the team? How do I start to identify what those need to become over time, right? This whole notion of virtual selling for my team is obviously this immediate thing. And so we're putting things in place. And so what keeps me up at night is, how do we learn in real time and get that dispersed and help? It may not come as natural to, et cetera. But then also how to deal with the different, one of the points that you made about the different personalities. So, you know, on my team, I have one eternal optimist who's like, we're going back in 2 weeks. We're going to be back in the office. Everything's going to be back to normal. And then you have the other person who's like, I'm not getting on a subway for the rest of my life. I will never come back. And I'm like, okay, all in one meeting, trying to get both of them to agree on something. And, you know, I often find myself waking going, how do I handle both of those at one time sometimes, right? When I'm one-on-one, it's much easier, but when I'm in a group setting trying to move something forward, the polarizing points of view is a challenge.
Are you gonna go back to the subway, Patricia?
Look, I live in New Jersey, and I'm so lucky. I live 6 minutes away from Unilever headquarters, so I don't take the subway. But but yes, I'm looking forward for the day that I can take the subway again. I would say that. But aligned with what Marla had said, I think what keeps me awake at night, Bruno, is how can I help the team to stay productive and to stay connected to a length of a time that I'm not aware of. You know, like, what are the strategies that I can put in place? Like, one thing, for example, being productive is the sense of belonging is very important, right? Like, we are all scattered. I'm more concerned. I have my direct reports and they are more senior. They have thicker skin, but I'm more concerned about the junior ones. I have two. Look, during the COVID time, I hired 3 new people different from my team. I had 2 of them who came, and 2 weeks later we were in lockdown. How I motivate these people? How do I train them, right? And since we are reshaping and rejigging most of our plans based on the new normal, so we are using a framework across Unilever, which is what we are doing now, near, and next. So we are changing all the plans and all the innovations. How can and we are focusing, like, fewer, bigger, better. Let's focus on what's important. And how can I make all of them have the sense that whatever they are working on, it's crucial for the business? Because I'm afraid that if they are at home, alone, feeling that whatever they are doing is not super important, how are they going to get motivated about it?
You know,
so that's a concern that I have. And also to stay connected, because because of this sense of belonging, I find it super important to all of us, right?
Absolutely. I will actually, Paul, I'm gonna now point to you with a different approach, actually, to answer some of those questions that Marla and Patricia put out there for us.
I think there's a couple of things. I mean, one of the things is that we're going through what's called an adaptive challenge. An adaptive challenge is that nobody really has the answer to it. And I think the first thing as leaders we kind of have to recognize is that we can't just come up and say, here are the answers, because the situation is a very moving situation. So I think one of the best things for leaders, one is the first to admit that, because and that two, that not one person can solve this. So there is going to have to be a lot around engaging the people in your organization in a way of solving this together. Because I think, you know, and it's not, so authority and leadership are sort of 2 very different things. And I think we have to break down the idea of authority and structure, but we still have to bring in a lot of leadership. And I think one of the challenges especially with immature leaders or people who have never really had to deal with sort of complexity and stuff like that, they're going to try and work harder at the problem. And sometimes they have to work different at the problem. And part of that is going to be letting go and being vulnerable, you know,
Absolutely.
And literally saying, look, I don't have all these answers and I can't give you all the answers, but what we can do is we're going to engage everybody in solving this adaptive problem, because nobody has all the answers. So I think there is a mindset that has to shift in terms of leaders thinking about what their role is and how they're going to engage with their people around this complexity and challenges that nobody really has the answers. I think those organizations that do that and take that adaptive approach will come out of this better.
Any specific example, and this is for the panel, any specific examples of what you're doing in terms of training or assessment, or if you're shifting some of the plans in terms of, you know, how to enable the team, any tools that you're using that you could share with us?
I'm not sure about any training specifically, Bruno. I think one thing that we are doing is doing everything in our power to enable them to work better at home. So for example, two things we have done. One is, since day one, we have open an allowance for everybody to buy all the equipments necessary to build a proper home office. So keyboard, mouse, laptop stand, and even an extra monitor if needed, right? There are people, especially the ones living in a bachelor apartment in New York City, sometimes they don't have even like a desk. They are working from their couches, which really concerns me. Like, they have pain on the neck, like the certain things of that we've been hearing that we need to be considered. The other thing that it came a little bit later, but I think it was a very interesting insight and very thoughtful from Unilever actually, which is there are people who are not very comfortable opening the camera because they don't want to show their house. They don't want to show their house. And I had one that came to me and said, Patty, I see when you have all this big leadership stuff, you know, every big senior leader in Unilever, they appear in front of a bookshelf full of books. I don't have a bookshelf in my house.
You know that they are selling. You know
fine.
that they are selling those panels with bookshelves on Amazon, right? So besides the virtual background, you can have also those.
Yeah, because, you know, I thought it was a very interesting point. So then what we have done, so we had created like a few backgrounds branded Dove, you know, so at least you can choose from and enable them to do something like that, right? So that is not something specific on the training that we've been doing. We have been adjusting. So we are creating advertising campaigns with creatives via Zoom without being able to shoot. So we've been doing workshops. We did the European conference with 300 plus people on the call. Like, and we are managing, right? It's unbelievable, the capacity of the human beings to adapt. It's crazy, and we are managing. But I think it's more on how can we equip them? How can we enable them to do in the best and most comfortable way possible?
And Marla, you were saying?
So I love that you guys are doing that. We've been doing a little bit of training in the sense that we are a big Slack organization, my group in particular. And so we've created a management channel within it, and really trying to get people to program great articles that they've read, to share stories where they might have been asked a question or have a scenario with someone on their team that someone else can learn from. So trying to create some cross-peer, kind of peer-to-peer sharing and learning. And then we've been, because budgets are very tight right now for us, we have asked our employees to take some pay reductions. And so spending money on training is kind of a hard thing to do right now.
Yeah.
Focusing on some key relationships we have where people are industry vets that are willing to kind of share knowledge. And so we've been tapping into any resource we have to try to keep people focused and motivate, but doing a lot of kind of internal trainings that we might have been sitting on before. We're really trying to fast track and get those out to try to help people. But we've also done things like, I do a every other week national meeting for my entire organization. And so we've changed how that meeting has been formatted. And so it's a 60-minute window, and we used to do this tell us in 10, and we'd have different people come and educate, inform, and inspire the team, and they have 10 minutes to do it in. And we've changed it and taken a page out of John Krasinski's book with a Meredith Good News instead of something.
Yeah, that's very cool.
And we're really highlighting wins. How did the team win? So we're really trying to focus on making it a little bit fun, having some interactive polls, trying to keep people, instead of them leaning back and turning their camera off, leaning in and being a part of it. So just different ways in trying to engage and teach and inspire without any resources.
Wow, but I love this idea. I love what you're doing, Patricia, in terms of this creativity and making people comfortable at home. And I love, Marla, you know, this potential of being creative and use the resource that you have. Doesn't matter, you know, sometimes you have more resource, sometimes you have less resource, but putting people in the center is always important, and focusing on the positives now and try to bring that ambiguity to a better balance. I think it's a great initiative. So congrats for that. Paul, do you have any comments on that?
No, I'm just reflecting on, you know, the whole sort of virtual experience that a lot of companies are looking at, how they can kind of set them up. But one of the things that I, you know, came across, which was interesting, where, you know, the CEO and one of my coaching clients, and the CEO came up and said, "Oh, we love this virtual environment and stuff like that." And he said, "I think we should just do this going forward." Now, he was sort of away in his sort of palatial home, sort of and talking about how wonderful it was, but, you know, he wasn't having a common experience with what all the other people were having. So even though he was, you know, some people are talking about this as, okay, we should go forward with all of this, but I think what we have to continue to differentiate, this is very different. Working from home is very different than working in a virtual environment, because you have all of the other stresses of families and partners, and, you know, your home worker, your home carer, your educator, your teacher, and all of these type of things. So I think, you know, the reality of still dealing with the whole situation is something that we have to keep on thinking about, you know. So setting us up virtually, yeah, I think all the things are great, but there's more we have to also do, just especially as we think about going back to work.
Yeah, totally. You know, I've been practicing on executive coaching and organizational coaching for a while now, and most of my connections are virtual, especially when it's one-to-one. So for that, there's not much difference. But for the group ones, we've been finding very creative ways to talk to people, and even having, you know, the other day I had something that I want to share because I thought it worked so well. Which was, you know, we were doing a team collaboration workshop, and we decided to do a stand-up. So everybody standing up, and with the cameras a little bit further, in a way that we could see the movements a little bit more and give a little bit more of interaction, and it worked really well. So, you know, just try to break the rhythm a little bit and doing things different, I also think can help in those days that, you know, they all seem the same. Every day is a Monday or every day is a Saturday. You know,
every Saturday is a Tuesday.
Yeah.
It depends on how you
don't know what day it is. It's really weird.
Yeah.
The days and the months are just.
Yeah, every Saturday is a Tuesday that we go to the supermarket, isn't it?
Anyway,
Strange how the days fly, weeks. Like you think it would go slow, but yet they really are flying.
Totally.
So, I always say the days are long, the weeks are fast.
Yeah, it's true.
It's crazy. So look, we are getting to the end. It's been such a pleasure, but I can't leave without asking you in your final considerations to actually leave an advice. So I have the audience that usually watch those videos. They are, you know, mostly professionals and executives, and I would love to hear from the three of you that have so much experience managing people and seeing what's happening in the executive world. What do you see are the main skills and capabilities, or what you expect to see in the professionals after COVID-19 with this? Did it change anything? So what would be your advice? Patricia, I'll start with you.
I would suggest Paul to start. That's why I was quiet. I had to control myself to be quiet. Paul, I was controlling myself for you.
Go, Paul.
I think one of the things is, again, realize that this is an adaptive challenge. Harvest the learnings that are coming from this. I mean, I think there have been some great learnings, and I think I do believe that the relationship and structure of work is going to shift going forward. I mean, I don't think we're going to ever get back to any sort of normal, and people talk about a new normal. I think having gone through this and all of this kind of uncertainty and dealing with this level of complexity, I think if we can harvest the learnings from that, and I think one of the other big pieces of advice I would give is that leaders have to put on their own mask first, and they really have to look after themselves first to be able to look after everybody else. So I think, you know, one of the things is, as leaders, is what do you need for yourselves to go through that, and be very conscious of kind of where you are and what you need to get through it, because you can have such a multiplier effect with others if you're in a good state to be able to engage. So that would be my advice, you know.
Thank you. Marla? Patricia now is the last one. She lost her prayer.
No, I think that's great advice. Like, even for me to be taking, I think that's great. I think some advice would be, you don't have to have all the answers by yourself, and talking to your peer sets, both within your organization and outside, I think is going to be key. Just getting the opportunity to talk to all of you, right, has given me ideas and lent some validation. So I think that as we go through this, we're not going to have a clear set of answers, and having a really good group of people to talk to, I think, and ideate and bounce things off is really going to be important. Listen to your teams, because they're in the front lines and they bring a different perspective, is also, I think, going to be key.
Thank you. Patricia.
So I think for me, Bruno,
now. I'm expecting a big, deep insight.
okay. No, look, I think for me, I think as leaders more than ever, we need to be aware and on what's going on with the teams. You know, I think it's more than ever the rule of, I think there is no longer such a thing, a do for the others what is good for you. I think more than ever, it's do for the others what's good for them. We need to try to understand what's good for them, be considerative, be respectful, that people have different needs, different ways to react, different ways of feeling motivated or demotivated. And I think it's the biggest thing for me, which I keep trying to remind myself every day, is how can I help them to stay productive and connected at the same time? So the whole sense of belonging, since we are not close to each other, and also to feel important to others. With so many people losing their jobs, people are scared, you know, if they start feeling they are not needed, or because you don't see your boys every day and people say, oh, maybe she thinks I'm not working, or maybe, no, we need to help. We need to facilitate all that to happen. And that, I'm sure that we will thrive.
That's great. Look, again, a big thank you for you all. I just want to say, and I think that's important, you know, when I put that panel together to talk about the theme, it's an interesting theme, but at the same time is a very hard theme as well, because we know how many people, and you pointed out, you all pointed out, how many people are in a very tough situation now, not knowing even if they have a job in the future or not, when that's going to finish, when it's going to come back. There are some industries that were completely devastated, and we don't know exactly how they're going to be. So lots of conversations going on now. But I try to bring to this panel not just experienced professionals like you are and with deep knowledge, but you know, people that I have a great laugh working with. And I had such a pleasure of work with each of you in different moments of my career, that for me is an amazing opportunity to have all of you here reunited in this debate. I'm sorry that we just have, you know, 45 minutes. I wish we had a full day of that, and I'm sure we're going to catch up offline. But with that, you know, just a big thank you for giving the time and for sharing your ideas with everybody that's going to watch that. And let's keep it up.
I think, Bruno, can I say one thing before we goodbye? I think it's also,
of course,
yeah, I can say, of course. I think it's also it's the first for the two of you. I don't know Paul, I don't know Marla, but I'm sure, knowing you, it's also a first for all of us to have you for 45 minutes behaving on a business meeting. That's a first on COVID for all of us.
I love it, Bruno.
No, I don't know about that. Anyway,
Yeah,
you know that as I'm the owner of the program here, I can edit this out. So, you know, if you make good comments.
So good to see you.
Very nice to meet you.
You too, Marla. Very nice to meet you, Patricia. Very nice to meet you guys.
Very nice to meet you likewise. Thank you,
I'd
Bruno,
love to
for
connect,
the opportunity.
Yes. Yeah. Bye, guys.
Right.
Bye-bye.
I'm ready.